team-based model of care, and then they embedded those changes within the organization by finding best practices from successful departments and then implementing it throughout the organization. So we use this model to implement our ACO, and Nico's going to go into a little more detail of how we're going to do that.
So building on what we learned from Cleveland Clinic, we also looked at articles and studies of successful ACOs to implement best practices, but also ACOs that failed so that we can avoid doing that. We also interviewed some executives that successfully implemented an ACO, and we found 4 elements that we feel are needed. The first is being patient-centric. We recommend to establish evidence-based clinical pathways for those 4 disease conditions that we talked about. We first want to perform data analytics to identify these members. Look at who our high-cost utilizers are, who has complex conditions, and who is constantly coming in and out of the hospital. Second, we want to recognize care gaps. So it's just more than knowing what their health assessment is. It's about understanding their life. It's about understanding their support system. Are they able to get medication constantly? Is there someone driving them to and from the hospital? Thirdly, we want to educate and engage the patient. We want to give them treatment options and have them very much involved in their care. The second element was that team-based model of care. And we want to emphasize that everybody is a caretaker, from the nurse taking the vital signs to the scheduler making the appointment. And of course, executive leadership buy-in is crucial. These patients have chronic conditions, and therefore they're going to see multiple physicians. And so we want to build a collaborative atmosphere where physicians consult with each other so that everybody's on the same page. And lastly, we want to track patient utilization across the care continuum, seeing where they're going for their post-acute care to make sure that they're going to high-quality, low-cost providers. In any team, you need a leader. And for a hospital, that leader is the physician. So our third element is having physician leadership. You're all probably wondering why you're seeing Mr. Rogers up there. And that's because we believe in any organization, there is a Mr. or Mrs. Rogers, a clinical leader who loves their community, who's dedicated to their patients, who goes above and beyond. And yet they're still well-respected and can inspire other physicians to buy into this vision. So we first want Little Gem to find their Mr. or Mrs. Rogers, and then a key component in having physician buy-in is educating them on what MACRA is and how it impacts them. And finally, we don't want to just find one leader, we want to build leaders. So we think a mentorship program among physicians can really help with that. And finally, and probably most importantly, we want to share our earnings with our physicians. If we're asking them to do all these things, we want to share in what we earn with them. So we want to renegotiate contracts so that the primary care specialists, their 20% bonus is tied to ACO metrics. And then for our specialists who currently have no bonus structure, we want to establish some kind of incentive pay for that. And our fourth element is communication. We recommend investing in technology to obtain data-driven insight and facilitate communication among the providers. Aside from being able to aggregate data across the care continuum, we recommend establishing care coordination tools such as ADT, which stands for Admissions, Discharge, and Transfer. So sending alerts to the team whenever one of our patients is hospitalized so that we can immediately respond to them. Another element is open communication. If we want to have physicians work together, we need to help them build trust and hold each other accountable. And one way to do that is to share metrics. And we know all physicians are very data-driven and they're competitive in nature. So when you're putting a piece of paper in front of them saying this is where you rank among your peers, they're going to work hard to stay on top. And if they're at the bottom, they're going to work harder to move up forward. Here is our 5-year timeline that kind of outlines the 4 elements I just talked to you about. As you can see, there are some ongoing processes that we feel will be ongoing for the life of the program, but there are key steps we need to take at the beginning, such as finding the Mr. and Mrs. Rogers, and then adjusting physician compensation. I know I just threw you guys a bunch of data and numbers, but it all comes back to the patient. And we really feel like these 4 elements is going to help us take care of some of the most vulnerable population in a way that's going to improve their health outcomes and improve our community. But our numbers are really great, which Brendan is going to talk to you about.
So we believe that by improving our quality and reducing our Medicare spend, we're going to be providing a better value for our patients. But also we need to make sure that we're providing a better value for our organization. It's got to be financially sustainable in order for us to continue to serve this population in the future. So we created a financial model and conducted a sensitivity analysis to see if this project was financially viable. Here are the assumptions we used to create our model, and most importantly, I want you to focus on the fact that we believe we'll maintain our quality standards. All the things we're going to be implementing should only improve those quality standards, but at this point we're at least going to maintain that we won't be incurring any penalty from CMS for dipping below those standards. And everything Nico talked about was great, improving our quality, really reaching out to the patient, but those things, they cost money. They represent a cost to the organization. So we went on to AHA and we found the average cost for a hospital system of our size and with our physician network structure to see what the average cost would be for implementing an ACO. And one of the things we found is that network development and management was the key. It's recruiting and maintaining your physician network. It's adding people to the ACO staff like care coordinators, and then compensating your physicians. It's a big deal to drive that physician buy-in to make sure you're compensating them appropriately. Next, the care coordination. This is all about creating that care continuum from our inpatient services to our ambulatory outpatient services so we can track their utilization across the board. Next, EHR and clinical information systems. This goes back to the communication aspect that Nico was talking about. So it's all about creating interoperability and the ability to communicate from our inpatient to our outpatient facilities, as well as analyze care patterns so we can identify care gaps as they occur. So here's our sensitivity analysis. As you can see, we have a best case, worst case, and a realistic prediction. From our best case, you can see that this project has a lot of upside. With the worst case, you can see there is some risk related to this project. However, in our realistic prediction, we found our average shared savings based on the number of participants in 2014 was 92 ACOs, and we found the average amount of payout that Medicare spent on those. And we used that year because during that time you had some ACOs that were doing very well and some that were doing very poorly. So we got an accurate prediction of what you could realistically expect if you go through the steps we're recommending. And from that model, you can see that the net present value is $3.2 million. We have an internal rate of return of 14%, and you break even from this project in 6 years. So although there is great upside and there is some risk to this project, we realistically believe that it is sustainable for the future. You might be wondering, with all the risk associated, why should we even act? So we put up a quote from German theologian Meister Eckhart that says, "The price of inaction is greater than the cost of making a mistake." So first of all, you have the financial impact. There's a 4% penalty if you don't act, and we estimate that to be between $7 to $10 million per year. But also there's opportunity costs. Right now, our competitors are forming an ACO, and they have the ability to steal market share as well as some of our physician network. There's also the ability that we could be negotiating with other payers like Medicare Advantage programs and being able to expand our network. But most importantly, it's in line with our mission statement and strategic objectives. Starting an ACO is going to help us better serve the community of B-City and create a healthier population. So now Evan's going to go into a little more detail about how this ACO is going to create a better community.
So we talked about better care, and we talked about better value, and now we're going to talk about better community, and it's really what we think is the heart of Little Gym for B-City. So better community means happier and healthier populations of B-City, and that's engaging people in the community out of our four walls. So out of the walls of the clinic, out of the walls of the hospital, but really what's happening around us and in our community that we can better their lives. A good example of that would be a partnership such as Meals on Wheels, which provides food to people who cannot physically transport themselves to go get it. Also, possible future opportunities such as partnering with Uber to transport patients from their home to their provider to get that care they need when they can't transport themselves. And so where does this align with Little Gym Health in particular? Well, there's a lot of strategic alignment that matches up very well. Recruiting and retaining top talent, well, we're having a great provider network with our physicians. We're bringing that community network that we're slightly partnered with right now and bringing them in, but only the ones that can deliver the high quality care that we expect. And so that's one great way that connects with strategic priorities. Then you have remain the number one choice. Well, we have high quality metrics and shared savings, but when people are receiving great quality healthcare, they're going to keep coming back to us to provide that for them. Financially sustainable, well, payer contracts is a great opportunity, such as Brendan mentioned, where we engage payers who are taking care of people who aren't Medicare. So expanding that community by showing how well we're doing in Little Gym Care Coalition, and showing that quality of health we provide, that we can maybe renegotiate contracts that are more favorable to us for other kind of patients. And also, the shared savings we experience and the reducing costs will be financially sustainable. And then the healthier population. So better clinical outcomes, engaging people in the community will truly make B-City a better place to be. So the strategic priorities, they align, but also the mission statement, to improve lives through a never-ending quest for quality healthcare. We think Little Gym Care Coalition is another step in that never-ending quest to deliver high-quality healthcare, and if the better care, better value, and better community aspects are all targeted adequately enough, we think we'll be very well positioned in B-City to be the #1 healthcare provider. Thank you. I'll open up to questions.
We have 5 minutes for questions.
So you talked about how you're going to need the data analytics to
Yeah, so we built the cost into our model, and we got that from AHA, so it was pretty average cost for, like I said, a hospital of our size. But really, it's just accumulating data and then putting into systems that can really work with that data and come out with some business intelligence or some clinical intelligence to be able for us to interpret that and find those care gaps. But we did build that into our financial model.
I have a quick question. So first of all, just thank you for talking so much about how you're prioritizing patients and better patient care. I think that was really commendable. My question is about your incentive structure with physicians. So you talked a lot about how you'd have shared savings with the physicians. How would they share in the downside risk? And if you have outlier physicians, how would you identify them if they're not meeting quality metrics that you set?
So the downside risk, so we've actually, the research we've conducted is that we haven't found an ACO that's underperformed so much where they have to pay back anything. It's just the reduction in shared savings. And so we think with that transparent data of how they're performing, that, like we said, physicians respond very well to other physicians and to data and to competition, which we're incorporating all those aspects. And so by seeing that you're underperforming, you're going to want to bring that back up. And if you're not, then you can't be part of our account care organization. And that's the same as bringing in that community network that we're loosely affiliated with. We want to see who's truly performing well and deliver that high quality, so we're not just bringing in anyone. So we're all high performers. But like we said, we haven't seen any evidence that they have to pay back anything from Medicare quite yet. And we hope, based on the PQRS measures that we have in there, that the quality will stay high.
In addition, that's kind of part of why we wanted a mentorship program, just so that it's team-based and we want to pair providers that are high quality and high performing to those that aren't doing as well, and pulling everybody up as a team.
Great job on the presentation. I really appreciated the part about the physician buy-in and the organizational change and the culture change, because that's so critical to all of this. If you could talk a little bit more about how much you believe the organization is actually going to have to change, and are there any investments? So you've got investments in a leader and technology. Were there any other investments to help you through that organizational change?
Yeah, I think one of the things we built in was the ACO management and staff. So you're going to need people to be on top of this, because obviously clinicians, their job is to care for patients. So bringing in care coordinators and schedulers who can kind of augment the service and make sure things are running smoothly and take care of everything that isn't taking care of the patient, or at least be a part of it. That's something we built into the model, and I think it'll help change that culture. I don't think we really need to change as much at Little Gem. I'm sure everybody really cares about the patient, but the one change is thinking about the patient and thinking about their spend. Are we doing the most efficient thing for this patient and making sure that we're taking care of them at the lowest cost, both for them and for Medicare? So I think that sort of shift, it's a changing mentality for them. So I think that's the biggest area where we'll have to focus.
Right, having that proper support staff for our physicians, because a lot don't like reporting and they don't like the certain back office things that they really didn't go through medical school for and pay all that money and are providing care. They want to provide for the patient. And so having that support, like we talked about, that we built into our model, is key to having them buy into it as well.
Do you see your care coordination or care coordinators as a centralized group throughout the enterprise, or do you see it more decentralized, deployed to each individual area?
So I think one key aspect of that, and a lot with our implementation further down the road, is that you have to talk with your staff and your physicians to work with them for that and see what's best and what they think is best. I think there's pros and cons to a centralized and decentralized model. So that'd be something to experiment in the future with and talk to your staff about. But I think, like I said, there are pros and cons because it's more of a strategic standpoint of what's going on and where you really need to put your resources in a centralized point of view. So I can see a strength in that, but that's something that we would love to put in with the rest of our staff.
However, I think we do feel that we're so focused on team-based, so even if the care coordinators are working with specific patients, there should be some kind of round table. How are you dealing with this? What are the issues you're coming up with, and sharing those best practices with each other?
We have time for one more question.
In your financial model, did you build in any change in market share? Was it all around just quality improvements?
Yeah, we tried to keep it pretty conservative to show that without any growth in market share or anything like that, that this is still a financially stable project. So we kept it pretty conservative and just had the shared savings and the bonus and didn't have it grow by any percent of growing our market share. We do expect and hope part of that best case scenario is if we're really achieving great shared savings, you know, there's a lot of opportunity to grow our market, but in the realistic one, we kept it very conservative.
That's all the time we have for questions. Thank you.
Thank you.